The call that shattered my world came at 2:17 in the morning. I had always dreaded late-night calls, those harbingers of news too terrible to wait until dawn. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. A nurse's voice cut through the silence, formal but urgent. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is Mercy Hospital. Your son James has been admitted with a suspected brain aneurysm. You should come immediately." The world tilted off its axis. At 65, I had already lived through the death of my husband 10 years earlier, but nothing prepared me for this. My brilliant, kind-hearted only son, my James, couldn't be dying. It wasn't the natural order of things. I threw on a coat over my nightgown, my hair uncombed, my body moving on autopilot while my mind screamed for this to be some mistake. At the hospital, the doctor's face was grim, his words measured but merciless. Massive aneurysm, no warning signs, nothing could have been done. Already gone, just like that. James was taken from me. My knees nearly gave way under the weight of those words. I clutched at the wall to steady myself, refusing to believe, even as the world blurred into a gray haze of paperwork and questions. Hours passed before Sophia finally arrived. She was James's wife for 10 years, the mother of my only grandchild, Lucas. But she walked in wearing designer sunglasses, her nails freshly manicured, her phone in hand. "There was traffic," she murmured, avoiding my eyes. "And I had to find someone to watch Lucas." I stared at her in disbelief. I had already called the school, arranged for Lucas to be with his best friend's family. She hadn't even thought to do it. My sweet grandson left in the dark about his father while his mother worried about traffic and childcare logistics. When I told her James was gone, her lips parted in a perfect O of shock, her hand fluttering to her throat. To anyone else, her reaction might have looked authentic. But I had known her for a decade, had studied her closely, both as a mother and as a psychology professor with a trained eye for performance. For the briefest second, I saw something flicker across her expression, not grief, but calculation. Relief, perhaps. A subtle shift before the mask of sorrow slipped back into place. That night, as we waited for James's body to be released, his best friend and attorney Thomas Bennett arrived. His embrace was warm, his grief raw and visible. "I can't believe he's gone," he whispered. Then his voice steadier, he told us there were matters in James's will that required immediate attention. At the mention of James's will, I saw Sophia straighten. She dabbed her still dry eyes and replied smoothly, "Of course. We'll meet tomorrow. For Lucas's sake, I'd like things settled quickly." It was almost obscene how fast her mind jumped to settled. My son's body was barely cold, and she was already making plans. The funeral was agony. My chest ached as if someone had hollowed me out. Lucas sobbed quietly beside me, his little shoulders shaking. His grief was real, pure, unmasked, unlike his mother's performance. Sophia looked immaculate in black, dabbing at her dry eyes, with a monogrammed handkerchief, leaning against me only when people were watching. When mourners approached, she played the role of devastated widow flawlessly. Only I could feel how lightly she leaned on my shoulder, ready to straighten the moment someone important came near. I held Lucas tightly, answering his trembling question. "Is Daddy really in there?" with words meant to soothe, though they shattered me. "His body is, sweetheart. But the part that made him Daddy, his love, his spirit, that's still with you." Sophia's eyes, meanwhile, scanned the room like a predator. She whispered with strangers, smiled too sweetly at wealthy acquaintances, and lingered too long with a tall, well-dressed man she introduced as Richard Harlow, one of James's real estate partners. The way her hand brushed his arm was not the gesture of a grieving wife. I filed the observation away, my mind cataloging details even through the fog of grief. The day after the funeral, we met in Thomas's office for the reading of the will. Sophia sat poised, expecting the world to be handed to her. At first, her confidence was justified. Thomas listed assets left to her: a lake house, an investment portfolio, $500,000 in life insurance. She nodded, smug in her triumph. But then Thomas continued. "The family home, the cars, the personal accounts left to me." My eyes widened, shock mingling with sorrow. Sophia's smile froze, then cracked. "That's impossible," she snapped, her nails digging into the leather armrests. "It's legal," Thomas replied firmly. The home was purchased solely in James's name before your marriage. He updated the will 3 months ago. Sophia's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. He never mentioned this. This must be some mistake. But it wasn't. My son had foreseen something. He had protected me and Lucas with foresight that chilled me when Thomas handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, in James's handwriting, were words that tore at my heart. Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I couldn't trust Sophia. She's been planning things that would hurt Lucas. The assets aren't for you, they're tools. Protect him. Don't let her know what you know. Watch, wait, and be ready. I love you. Please take care of my boy. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing silently in Thomas's office. Even in death, James was guiding me, asking me to step into a role I had never imagined, guardian protector strategist. Sophia's mask slipped after that. She hissed into her phone when she thought I wasn't listening, furious that James had blindsided her. The house, the cars, even the education fund, it's all gone. No, I'll fight this. I deserve more than some lake house and insurance money. That was when I knew this wasn't just grief. This was war, and the battlefield was my son's legacy and my grandson's future. Lucas became the center of my world in those first weeks. He asked heartbreaking questions, still waking each morning hoping to find his father making pancakes in the kitchen. I tried to fill the void, though I knew I never could. And all the while I watched Sophia. She arrived in sleek business suits, spoke of condos and fresh starts, hinted that I should transfer the house back where it belonged. She dangled Lucas's welfare like bait, insisting it was all for him. But I remembered James's words. Don't let her know what you know. So I smiled, nodded, played the role of grieving but pliable mother-in-law, and privately I began to document everything: her absences, her manipulations, the subtle ways she neglected Lucas's needs. The night she announced a healing trip to Miami with Lucas, supposedly for bonding, but in reality with Richard, my heart turned to ice. Lucas clutched his stuffed dinosaur, whispering that he didn't want to miss his school project, that Dad always said commitments mattered. I promised him I'd talk to his mother. When Sophia returned late, smug from her trip, Lucas came back with sunburned shoulders, a stomach ache, and stories of being left with a hotel babysitter. He confided in me that he woke alone at night, scared, while his mother laughed in another room with Richard. My anger simmered, but I kept my face calm, soothing Lucas with ginger tea and quiet assurances that his feelings mattered. I recorded every word, every tear. Each piece of evidence became part of the case James had started before his death. A case I would continue until my grandson was safe. And then, over a lavish dinner one evening, Sophia revealed her true colors. She slid a document across the table, offering me a deal: I give her the house and cars, and in return she would allow me to see Lucas on weekends and holidays. She smiled as if it were a generous compromise. My hand trembled as I folded the paper and tucked it away. It was extortion in disguise. But what Sophia didn't realize was that she had just handed me the final piece of evidence I needed. James had trusted me to protect Lucas, and I would, no matter the cost. I stared at the document Sophia had slid across the table, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against her wine glass, as if waiting for me to sign away my dignity along with my son's legacy. My chest burned with rage, but I swallowed it, keeping my face composed the way James would have wanted me to: steady, strategic, never reckless. I'll think about it, I said softly, folding the paper and tucking it into my purse. Sophia smirked, clearly mistaking my restraint for weakness. That night, after she left with her designer purse slung over her shoulder, I sat at my desk with the letter James had written me. His words seemed to echo in the silence of my study. Protect him. Don't let her know what you know. My hands trembled as I placed Sophia's agreement next to James's letter, the contrast so stark it made my stomach turn. My son had left me his faith, his love, and his trust. His widow had left me blackmail, thinly veiled as compromise. Lucas padded into the room, then his small voice breaking through my storm of thoughts. Grandma, are you okay? His hair stuck up in messy tufts, his dinosaur pajamas slightly askew. I opened my arms and he climbed onto my lap, curling against me, as though he still expected his father to walk through the door at any moment. I miss Daddy, he whispered. My heart cracked all over again. I miss him too, sweetheart, every single day. Mommy says we'll be fine because we still have money. He added his words careful as though repeating something he'd been told. But I don't care about money, I just want pancakes again. Tears blurred my eyes. Lucas didn't care about assets or houses or cars. He wanted love, stability, the small rituals that made childhood safe. And that was exactly what Sophia had failed to give him. The next morning I met with Thomas, the attorney James had trusted. I laid out everything: the trip to Miami, the babysitters, Lucas's stories of being left alone, the document Sophia had tried to push on me. Thomas's face darkened as he read. "This isn't just neglect," he said finally. "It's leverage. She's trying to coerce you into relinquishing property in exchange for visitation. Catherine, this could be the foundation for a custody petition." My stomach twisted. "Do you really think I could win custody against his own mother?" Thomas leaned forward. "You're not trying to erase her. You're protecting Lucas. The courts don't take parental rights lightly, but with enough evidence you could at least gain joint custody or primary custody with visitation for her, especially if we can prove a pattern of neglect." His words planted both fear and resolve in me. The idea of a courtroom battle made me want to collapse, but the thought of Lucas being raised by a woman who saw him as nothing more than a pawn steeled my spine. That evening, Sophia arrived unannounced, her perfume filling the foyer before I even saw her. She breezed in as though the house were already hers. Lucas ran up to hug her, and she gave him a distracted pat on the head before pulling out her phone. "We're going to move soon," she announced casually. "Richard thinks we should get a penthouse downtown. Lucas deserves something modern, not this old place." My blood ran cold. She was already planning to uproot him to erase James's memory from the walls he had built. I forced a calm smile. "That sounds like a big change." "Change is good," she replied, eyes glittering. "Besides, you can always visit him at the new place, if you're reasonable." I caught the unspoken threat. If I fought, her access to my grandson would be cut off. It was the same trap she'd laid with the document, only now she dangled my own flesh and blood as bait. After she left, I sat Lucas down with hot cocoa. "Sweetheart, how do you feel about moving downtown?" He frowned, stirring the cocoa slowly. "I don't want to. I like my school. And I like it here. Daddy planted the tree outside. If we move, I won't see it anymore." His eyes filled with tears. "Can't we just stay here, Grandma?" I hugged him tight, whispering fiercely against his hair. "We'll fight for this, Lucas, I promise." In the weeks that followed, I became both detective and guardian. I documented every call Sophia missed from the school, every late pickup, every excuse she gave for skipping parent-teacher meetings. I recorded Lucas's words about being left alone, his drawings, where he sketched himself standing small beside a giant faceless figure labeled Mom. Each detail cut me to pieces, but each detail also became part of the case James had entrusted me to build. The tension between Sophia and me grew sharper. She continued her charade of the grieving widow in public, but in private, she was icy, her eyes calculating. One evening over dinner at her condo, she let her mask slip completely. "You know, Catherine," she said, swirling her wine lazily, "James was too sentimental. He tied too much to this house, to tradition. But I'm not like him. I'm practical. I know how to make money work." She leaned closer, her smile razor sharp. "So either hand me what I deserve, or I'll make sure Lucas learns to live without you. Children forget fast at his age." Her cruelty was surgical. I sat frozen, my fork heavy in my hand. The thought of Lucas being cut from my life, manipulated into believing his grandmother was irrelevant, made my vision blur with fury. But I kept my composure. I smiled faintly, tucked away her words like ammunition, and excused myself. That night I wept into James's letter, whispering his name like a prayer. "I'll protect him, my love. I'll do what you couldn't. I won't let her win." The court filings began soon after. Margaret Sinclair, a custody lawyer recommended by Thomas, took my case. "You're not just fighting for property," she told me, her voice firm but kind. "You're fighting for a child's well-being. The courts respond to evidence. We'll gather it piece by piece until the picture is undeniable." Sophia, of course, retaliated with venom. Her attorney painted me as a meddling mother-in-law, trying to control what wasn't mine. She whispered lies into Lucas's ear, trying to make him doubt my love. One evening, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and asked, "Grandma, will I have to choose between you and Mommy?" The question pierced me deeper than any courtroom jab. I held him tightly and whispered, "No, sweetheart. You don't have to choose. You can love us both. But I'll always fight to make sure you're safe." The weeks leading up to the first custody hearing were a blur of affidavits, witnesses, and sleepless nights. I often found myself standing at James's grave, the winter wind biting at my face, whispering updates to him, as though he were still alive. "She's trying to take everything, James. She's trying to erase you. But I won't let her. Not while I have breath left." The night before the hearing, Sophia appeared at my door again, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We don't need to drag this through court," she said sweetly. "Just sign the house and cars over to me, and I'll let you see Lucas whenever you like. Otherwise, this could get very ugly." I stared at her, my grief hardened into steel. "It's already ugly, Sophia, and it won't be me who made it that way." Her eyes narrowed, her smile fading. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. Perhaps she realized that the woman she thought she could bully was gone, replaced by one who had nothing left to lose, but everything left to fight for. That night, I tucked Lucas into bed, kissing his forehead as he clutched his stuffed dinosaur. "I'll be there tomorrow," I whispered. "I'll fight for you." He nodded sleepily, whispering back, "Daddy would want you to win." The words broke me and rebuilt me all at once. When I lay down that night, exhaustion pressed heavy on my bones, but beneath it thrummed a quiet fire. Tomorrow I would walk into court, not just as a grieving mother or grandmother, but as the protector James had asked me to be. Tomorrow Sophia would learn that betrayal carries consequences. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and heavy, the kind of sky that seemed to press down on your shoulders. I dressed carefully, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. A navy suit pearls James had given me on my 50th birthday, and the letter he'd written folded neatly into my bag like a talisman. Lucas hugged me at the door, his dinosaur clutched in his hand. "Don't let her take me away, Grandma," he whispered. My throat ached, but I kissed his hair and promised I won't. At the courthouse, the marble floors echoed with every step, as if amplifying the weight of what was about to happen. Sophia swept in moments later, heels clicking like gunshots, Richard trailing close behind her in a tailored suit. She looked flawless, black dress pearls that weren't hers to wear, eyes red but dry. To the casual observer, she could have passed as the picture of dignity. But I had seen the cracks in her mask. When the bailiff called our case Reynolds versus Reynolds, a shiver ran down my spine. My family name turned into a battlefield. We sat across from each other at long wooden tables, the judge presiding above us with an air of weary authority. Margaret leaned close to me, whispering, "Stay calm. Let me handle the attacks. Just speak when asked and tell your truth." Sophia's attorney, a slick man with sharp cheekbones, stood first. He painted her as a devoted mother struggling through grief while a bitter mother-in-law tried to strip her of custody. "Mrs. Reynolds is attempting to replace her son's wife to control not only his estate, but also his child," he declared. "This is a case of overreach, not neglect." His words stung, not because they were true, but because I knew how convincing lies could sound when packaged neatly. Sophia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, lowering her lashes just so, as if rehearsed. Then Margaret stood. Her voice carried calm authority, every word deliberate. "Your Honor, this is not about bitterness. This is about the welfare of a child. We will show evidence of neglect of a mother who left her son with strangers while pursuing her personal interests, who attempted to extort her mother-in-law by tying visitation to property rights, who treats her child as leverage rather than as a person." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Sophia's jaw tightened, though she quickly composed herself. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Reynolds, please take the stand." My heart pounded as I walked forward, swearing to tell the truth. I sat, the wood of the chair cold against my back. Margaret began gently. "Mrs. Reynolds, can you tell the court about your relationship with your grandson?" I smiled faintly, my voice trembling, but clear. "Lucas is my heart. After my husband died, James and I leaned on each other, and when Lucas was born, he became the light of our lives. I've cared for him since he was a baby, school pickups, bedtime stories, helping him with his homework. He's not just my grandson. He's part of my soul." Margaret nodded. "And have you observed his mother's care of him?" A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to speak. "Yes, I've seen him left alone in hotel rooms while she spent evenings with companions. I've seen him sunburned and sick after being taken on trips that were more for her pleasure than his. I've heard him cry at night saying he feels invisible. My voice cracked. He's only 8 years old. He deserves better. Sophia's attorney rose for cross-examination, his tone sharp. Mrs. Reynolds, isn't it true that grief can color perceptions, that perhaps you misinterpreted normal parenting decisions through the lens of your own loss? I met his gaze steady. Grief does not invent bruises or tears. It does not create false memories of neglect. What I saw, what I recorded is real. He smirked. And isn't it also true that your son left you the family home and cars, bypassing his wife? Isn't it possible you're motivated by resentment, by a desire to punish her for what he chose? For a moment, my chest burned with fury. But I heard James's voice in my mind. Stay steady, Mom. I exhaled. My son left me those assets because he trusted me to protect his child. Not to punish anyone, but to protect. That's all I'm trying to do. Gasps rose in the gallery. Sophia's attorney hesitated, then returned to his seat. Margaret called Thomas next. He confirmed James's will, his intent, and the letter James had left me. Though it wasn't admissible as formal testimony, the judge allowed it to be read into record for context. Hearing my son's words spoken aloud in that solemn courtroom nearly broke me, but it also renewed my strength. Then came Sophia's turn on the stand. She walked with poise, sat elegantly, and began her performance. I love my son, she said, voice trembling just enough. I've made mistakes, yes, but I'm grieving. Sometimes I need time for myself, and maybe I leaned on others. But that doesn't mean I don't care for Lucas. He's my world. Margaret leaned forward. Mrs. Reynolds, did you ever attempt to negotiate visitation rights for Lucas in exchange for property? Sophia faltered. That was misunderstood. I only wanted fairness. Margaret held up the document Sophia had given me, her signature in black ink. Is this your handwriting? Sophia's face flushed. I was emotional. I wasn't thinking straight. The courtroom buzzed. The climax came when Margaret presented a video recording. It was grainy but clear, Lucas speaking softly to me in the kitchen, telling me how he was left alone at night in Miami while his mother laughed in another room. His small voice echoed in the chamber, heartbreaking in its sincerity. Sophia's mask shattered. That's not true, she cried, standing abruptly. He exaggerates. Children exaggerate all the time. But the damage was done. The judge's expression hardened. When arguments ended, the courtroom waited in tense silence. The judge shuffled papers, then looked up. His voice was grave. This court finds that while Mrs. Sophia Reynolds retains her rights as mother, primary custody will be granted to Mrs. Catherine Reynolds. Visitation for the mother will be established, supervised until further review. The welfare of the child demands no less. The gavel struck and my knees nearly gave way. Margaret squeezed my shoulder, steadying me. Across the room, Sophia's face contorted with rage, her hands shaking as Richard whispered furiously in her ear. But all I saw was Lucas waiting outside with Thomas. When I stepped into the hallway, he ran into my arms, his small voice muffled against my coat. We get to stay together, Grandma. I held him tight, tears streaming freely at last. Yes, sweetheart, we do. That night, the house was filled with laughter again, tentative, fragile, but real. Lucas helped me make pancakes in James's old skillet, spilling flour everywhere, his giggles like music. For the first time since James's death, I felt the heavy grief ease, replaced by something stronger, purpose. But even in victory, I knew the war wasn't truly over. Sophia would fight, scheme, manipulate. Yet I also knew this. I had faced her lies, her cruelty, and her betrayal, and I had won the first battle. And as long as I had breath in my body, I would keep fighting for Lucas. Victory in court should have felt like peace, like the end of a nightmare. For a moment it did. The gavel's echo still rang in my ears, and the weight of Lucas's small arms around my neck filled me with relief so pure it almost drowned my grief. But reality is rarely so simple. Sophia wasn't the kind of woman to accept defeat quietly. She had lost custody, but she hadn't lost her venom. In the days that followed, her anger slithered into our lives in new ways. She arrived late to supervised visits, smirking at the caseworker as though punctuality was beneath her. She showered Lucas with expensive toys, only to snatch them back when he refused to parrot the words she wanted. I miss Mommy more than Grandma. I want to live with you, Mommy. When he clung to me instead, her smile froze into something sharp and cold. One evening after a visit, Lucas crawled into bed beside me, clutching his dinosaur. His voice was barely a whisper. Grandma, Mommy said if I tell people I don't like her house, she'll stop loving me. His eyes shimmered with confusion and fear. Can moms stop loving their kids? The question cut me deeper than any blade. I pulled him close, stroking his hair. No, sweetheart. Love doesn't just stop. Sometimes people get lost in their own pain or selfishness, but that's not your fault. You are lovable exactly as you are. My voice trembled, but I forced every word to carry certainty. And I will never stop loving you. But inside, fury coiled tight. This wasn't just bitterness anymore. Sophia was trying to poison his mind, twist his innocence into a weapon against me. And the cruelest part, she wasn't hurting me half as much as she was hurting her own child. Thomas warned me that she might escalate. Don't be surprised if she tries to appeal, he said, his voice steady, but his eyes wary. Or worse, if she goes to the press. He was right. A week later, a local gossip blog published a story, Wealthy Widow Denied Custody by Jealous Mother-in-Law. The article dripped with accusations portraying me as a controlling matriarch who had stolen Lucas to punish his mother. Sophia's fingerprints were all over it, quotes from anonymous friends, photos of her leaving court with crocodile tears. The narrative spun to cast her as the victim. Neighbors looked at me differently for a while, their smiles tinged with pity or suspicion. Some whispered, others avoided me altogether. At church, a woman I'd known for years pulled me aside, asking delicately, "Is it true you kept Lucas from his own mother?" I swallowed the hurt and answered calmly, "I'm keeping him safe. That's all I've ever wanted." Lucas felt the tension too. "Why are people saying bad things about you, Grandma?" he asked one afternoon, his eyes wide with worry. I knelt beside him. Because sometimes when people are angry, they say things that aren't true. But the people who really know us, the people who love us, they'll believe what's real. And you know the truth, don't you? He nodded solemnly, hugging me. You take care of me. Those words became my anchor. Still, Sophia's games gnawed at me. During supervised visits, she whispered poison in Lucas's ear. When she wasn't allowed to be alone with him, she sent letters filled with false promises. If you tell the judge you want to live with me, we'll go to Disney World. I intercepted one of them, tucking it into the growing folder of evidence. Every page felt like a weight in my hands, but I saved them all. Through it all, I leaned on James's letter, rereading it late at night when the house was quiet. Protect him. Watch, wait, and be ready. I whispered back into the silence, I'm trying, James. I'm doing everything I can. The breaking point came one snowy evening in January. Lucas had just returned from a visit, his cheeks flushed not with cold but with tears. He ran upstairs, slamming his bedroom door, something he almost never did. I knocked gently before entering. He was curled on his bed, his dinosaur clutched so tightly the seams stretched. What's wrong, sweetheart? He buried his face in the pillow. Mommy said you're lying. She said you're keeping me from her because you hate her. She said Daddy wouldn't want me to live here. His shoulders shook with sobs. Is that true? Did Daddy really not want me here? My heart cracked open. I sat beside him, pulling him into my arms. Lucas, listen to me. Your daddy loved you more than anything in this world. He wanted you safe. That's why he trusted me to take care of you. Not because he didn't want you with your mom, but because he was worried she wouldn't give you what you need. My tears fell into his hair. He would be so proud of you right now for being brave, for asking questions. He wanted you here, with me, with love. Slowly, his sobs quieted. He looked up at me with those wide, searching eyes. James's eyes. You promise. I promise, I said fiercely. On my life, I promise. That night, after Lucas finally fell asleep, I stood by the window staring out at the snow-dusted tree James had planted years ago. My grief twisted into steel. Sophia's cruelty had crossed a line. It was no longer about property or appearances. It was about the soul of a child, and I would not let her steal that from him. Margaret filed a motion the next week to further restrict Sophia's visitation, citing her attempts at manipulation. Sophia raged, her lawyer sputtering, but the judge listened. Temporary supervised visitation was reduced, her contact limited to shorter monitored sessions. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Sophia's fury was palpable, her eyes burning across the courtroom as though she could set me aflame with her hatred. Yet, beneath it, I saw something else: desperation. She was losing control, and she knew it. Lucas noticed the change too. After the ruling, he smiled, more laughed more, even started drawing again. One evening, he showed me a picture he'd made at school: a house with a big tree, a grandmother and boy holding hands beneath it, the sun shining bright. "This is us," he said proudly. Tears stung my eyes as I kissed the top of his head. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Still, I knew Sophia wasn't finished. Women like her didn't stop when the courts closed doors. They found windows cracks, shadows to slip through. And sure enough, rumors trickled back. She was meeting with reporters, threatening appeals, whispering lies to anyone who'd listen. But something inside me had shifted. Her words no longer shook me as they once had. Because every night I tucked Lucas in, kissed his forehead, and heard him whisper, "Good night, Grandma. I love you." That love was my fortress, stronger than her poison. As winter melted into spring, I realized this war wasn't about winning every battle. It was about endurance, about showing Lucas every single day that love was louder than lies. And slowly, steadily, we began to build a new life. By the time spring unfurled across the fields, the snow melting into rivers that carried the weight of winter away, Lucas and I had found something like a rhythm again. The mornings began with pancakes, sometimes burnt, sometimes perfect, always shared with laughter. Afternoons were filled with school games in the yard or homework at the kitchen table. Nights ended with stories, often James's favorites, the same ones he used to read to Lucas when he was small. There was still grief. That never left us. But in between the grief, there was life. And for the first time since my son's death, I felt hope stretch itself awake inside me. Sophia, of course, didn't disappear. She continued to claw at the edges of our peace. She filed an appeal only for it to be dismissed for lack of merit. She sent angry emails to Margaret full of accusations and half-truths. Once she even showed up outside Lucas's school, her presence like a dark shadow across the playground fence. But the court order was clear. The principal called me immediately, and within an hour Sophia was escorted away. Lucas was shaken, but as we drove home, he asked softly, "She can't take me, right?" "No," I told him firmly, my hand tightening on the wheel. "No one can take you from me." For a moment, he looked out the window at the budding trees, his reflection small and solemn. Then almost in a whisper, he said, "Daddy knew you'd keep me safe." Tears burned behind my eyes. Yes, sweetheart, he knew. It wasn't about revenge anymore. I realized that one evening as I sat by the fireplace, James's letter in my hands, the ink smudged slightly from all the times I had traced the words. At first I had been fueled by anger, by the need to prove Sophia wrong, to expose her lies. But in the end, what mattered most wasn't her downfall. It was Lucas's healing. It was love being louder than betrayal. It was keeping my promise to James. The months passed, and slowly the world stopped whispering about us. The neighbors who had once looked at me with suspicion began to smile again when they saw Lucas riding his bike down the street, his laughter ringing like bells. At church, the same woman who had asked if I'd stolen my grandson approached me with tears in her eyes. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "I see now you did what was right." Vindication didn't come in a courtroom victory or a headline proving me correct. It came in the small moments: Lucas running into my arms after school, his drawings taped proudly to the fridge, his whispered prayers at night, where he thanked God for Grandma. Sophia's life, meanwhile, seemed to unravel on its own. Richard, the man she had clung to so desperately, left her for another woman. Her debts piled high, her name whispered now, not as grieving widow, but as unstable and reckless. I didn't rejoice in her ruin. I only felt a weary sadness, the kind you feel when you watch someone choose destruction over redemption. One evening, as Lucas and I walked in the garden, he pointed to the tree James had planted years ago. Its branches were heavy with blossoms pink and white against the fading light. "Daddy said this tree would be mine someday," he told me. I smiled, blinking back tears. It already is, sweetheart. It's yours to climb, to sit under, to dream beneath. Just like this house, this yard, all of it is yours. He leaned against me, his small hand slipping into mine. And yours too, Grandma, forever. That night, after Lucas had gone to bed, I sat at my desk and opened the folder of evidence I had once guarded like a weapon. I flipped through the pages, Sophia's manipulative letters, the photos, the recordings. Then slowly I closed it and locked it away. It no longer defined us. It had served its purpose. What defined us now was love and the life we were building in the shadow of loss. Grief will always be a part of me. Losing James left a wound that will never fully close. But in that wound, I found strength I never knew I had. I learned that betrayal can cut deep, but it doesn't have to destroy you. I learned that sometimes justice isn't about punishment, it's about protection. And most of all, I learned that love, the quiet, steadfast kind, is the greatest inheritance we can leave behind. If you've walked with me through this story, through the grief and the fury, the courtroom battles and the quiet victories, then, you know life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about what we do with it. It's about who we become when tested, and how we choose to love when it would be easier to hate. And so this is what I want to leave with you. No matter what betrayal you've faced, no matter how dark your days feel, there is always a way to build again. Not perfectly, not without scars, but with honesty, with courage, with love. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, subscribe for more stories like this, and leave me a comment below. Tell me what you've endured, what you've overcome, or simply what you felt as you listened. Your words keep this community alive, just as James's words kept me alive.